Hi everyone, I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes about teaching unprepared students. It's a wonderful book written by Kathleen Gabriel, and I believe you'll be getting a copy of it. It provides a really good uh, overview of what we at the community college deal with on very different levels. So, in order for us to have a picture of what an unprepared student looks like, I'm going to focus mostly on our students who have graduated high school in the past 4 to 5 years with their ACT scores, what it tells us. Now, at Gadsden State Community College, obviously, we have unprepared students who come in as adults and they haven't been in school in a long time, don't know how to navigate computers and what have you. But for this presentation, we're going to focus on our high school graduates in the last 3 to 5 years and what that looks like for us. So according to the ACT results nationally, 49% of students do not have the reading skills necessary for academic reading in colleges, and 42% of those are not prepared for college level math. Now, nationally, that can mean so many things, as statistics can be interpreted in many ways. But we want to narrow our scope a little bit and look at what the 2015 ACT scores tell us about students in Alabama specifically. So, 91% of African American students are not ready for college math in the state of Alabama. That's a huge divide. We realize that our African American predominant areas in Alabama have lower funded schools and have a lack of teachers. 72% of Hispanic students in the state of Alabama are not ready for college math, and 82% of African American students are not ready for college reading. And then we look again at 65% of Hispanic students are not college ready for reading either. Now, I focus a little bit on minorities because when we look at those higher and lower socioeconomic backgrounds, we see that these students have similar abilities but different opportunities. And that's something we'll look at more in just a few minutes. So, what does this data tell us? It tells us that students are not receiving equal education opportunities and they are not college ready. So even if we look in the Etowah County, Calhoun County areas, we understand that this data just shows us that things are unequal in our society, specifically in the state of Alabama. As college instructors, there's very little we can do about that, but it can help us to see our classroom and our students in a different light. So in Alabama specifically, the benchmark for reading and English on the ACT is an 18. Okay, so if a student receives an 18, that means that they have met a certain benchmark. However, nationally, that's actually pretty low in comparison to other states. But the community college system of Alabama requires that students score a 20 on reading and English in order to register for English 101 without remedial courses. So when we think about what that 20 means, does that actually put students in a classroom who are prepared? But the benchmark here that we have is an 18. The requirements do not line up for a real understanding of what college ready means. So if the benchmark in Alabama is 18, but the community college system looks at it as 20, it means that there is something wrong here. Students are not being pushed to be college ready. So at-risk students at Gadsden State, we look at us and look at our unprepared student numbers. At Gadsden State, and this is from the data from spring-fall 2014, 70% of our students were first-generation college students. So that means that they are the first person in their family to either complete a degree or attempt to complete a degree. 63% of qualified student support services students, which were based on income status alone. Okay, so then 54% required at least one developmental course, and then 43% required at least one developmental math course. And in fall 2016, 21% of our students in developmental math were repeating a course. So what does this tell us about what's happening at our school? Now, there is talk and chatter about changing developmental education courses. So we want to look at this as understanding that we have to have dev ed courses because our students are at risk they're being underserved. Providing developmental courses to our student population gives us the opportunity to prepare students to complete coursework that will allow them to become productive members of society. So by giving these students an opportunity to receive a degree or a technical training, they will become employable, thus no longer having to rely on any kind of government assistance. So perhaps spending now and making these developmental courses rigorous and making these developmental courses work, then we will have we'll be able to make money for the state later. So how do we help our developmental students? So students born into higher and lower socioeconomic backgrounds have similar abilities but different opportunities. This is incredibly important because sometimes our developmental students, our at-risk students, are pushed to the wayside because it is believed that they don't have the same abilities as students with higher economic backgrounds. So how do we reach these developmental students? So we need to look at what we can do to reduce the number of students that fail or drop out of college. And so we need to look at how we can do this with developmental courses. So if we take a look at this idea that community colleges are free access to all people in Alabama, we can't ignore the importance of being a skilled reader to be able to do math at the college level. So we need to make sure that we are providing quality courses in reading and math, but also in those other courses that are not just reading and math, that we can find ways to support student learning. So in the book, Teaching Unprepared Students, she gives us 5 guiding principles. First, she believes that all students, including those who are prepared or at risk, can become lifelong learners. And that if students are going to have significant change, they have to have commitment and time. And struggle is a necessary and important part of life in college or in general. And students must accept responsibility for their learning progress. And of course, professors should never do for students what students can do for themselves. So looking at what is a lifelong learner. So we want to be able to change a student's belief about themselves. Oftentimes, developmental students do not feel that they're part of an education system because they are put in these remedial courses. And so we need to be able to let them see these experiences as a way to lay a foundation. Because most developmental and international students have also experienced race, cultural, or gender issues, they must learn to connect their past experience to their future expectations. So they need to understand what are their abilities. So we've got to be able to support a student's self-concept, their self-appraisal, and allow students to measure their strengths and weaknesses. So they've got to understand their own abilities. By doing that, we can create learner-centered classrooms, we can engage students, and help them find the academic support and advisement so that they can receive positive outcomes. So we have to understand that without struggle, there is no progress. So how do we help students find what they need on campus? We want to help them to find student support services, the Cardinal Tutoring Center, be able to reach their professors or their instructors outside of class. So we have to make sure that students understand that they are responsible for their learning goals. And sometimes in class, it's good to have students to make their goals and write their goals. And that way, as an instructor, you can provide positive reinforcement. One of the things I understand with my developmental students is oftentimes they don't understand their own strengths and weaknesses. They come to college with very high expectations, but little ability to understand their own ability in and out of the classroom. And we have to make sure that students understand what their learning styles are and to understand what they're good at, what do they enjoy, the difference in a life goal and a career goal. Sometimes I believe that self-exploration is incredibly important in our classroom. So on the first day of class, One of the recommendations that the book provides for us is, of course, to hand out the syllabus. Make this syllabus accessible. Make it easy for the students to read and to navigate. In the syllabus, establish your goals, establish your policies and procedures, provide contact information and guidelines, ways that students will understand how to do makeup work, when is it due, what is available on Blackboard. There's so many things that they can understand just in the syllabus. So my grandmother told me one time, because I'm a third generation teacher in Alabama, I have always liked to smile. And I remember the first day I was hired, or the first week I was hired for my first teaching job, I was 22 years old. And my grandmother told me, don't let them see you smile, because then they'll know they can break you. Well, this is an old wives' tale, because how can you not smile on the first day of school if instruction and the classroom is your passion? So I found that if I make myself approachable and students understand that your character can be consistent, it makes the classroom much more enjoyable. So in the first week of class, we want students to have realistic expectations. We want to not teach on the defensive. And I always tell my students that I don't live on the defensive, meaning that I don't automatically assume that all of my students are cheaters or liars, or that all of my students do not understand what college is, or they do not belong. Instead, I want to teach on the offensive. I don't assume anybody in the room is there to cheat. I don't assume that anyone there is just there to get their Pell Grant check, or that they're just there to waste my time. Instead, I want to look at my students as they have chosen to be here. They are here regardless of their circumstances. So I also stress to my students that there is no such thing as an English emergency. That doesn't exist. Because if something doesn't go right with their homework, or it's late at night, or something happens with Blackboard, it's okay. That's not an emergency. No one's going to die. We can figure this out together. Because students oftentimes have no confidence, specifically our at-risk students. So we need to make sure that they understand that anything that they do can be fixed. I also have students understand what time management is. Have them create a log of their day, understand how they're wasting their time, how they could be more productive. Most of the time, our developmental or underprepared students just do not understand what time management is. So how can they change their schedule to allow for extra time? Who can hold them accountable? So lastly, I want to say that as a community college instructor, it is incredibly important that we meet our students where they are, and that we understand that students can be successful regardless of where they're from.